Hey everybody, welcome to the Mother FIGRs podcast. I'm Caitlin Darkangelo, founder and co-owner of Figure, Midwestern wife, and girl mom. I'm a dual certified pregnancy and postpartum trainer, majored in exercise science from the University of Michigan, earned my master in management degree from Duke University, and have been coaching in the fitness industry for over a decade. This podcast dives into all things pregnancy and postpartum fitness, especially in how to navigate strength and intensity training in these seasons. Whether you're in it yourself, trying to get pregnant, or coaching this population, you're in the right place. I'm excited to share personal experiences, client stories, guest interviews, and evidence-based strategies to give you the guidance, insights, and clarity needed to navigate these seasons with confidence. And with that, let's get rolling. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mother FIGRs podcast. Today, I am going to do a research study review, or I kind of mentioned this in one of my first podcasts of one of the things I really wanted to bring to this podcast or to you guys is literally word for word from what current research is saying about pregnancy and postpartum exercise. It can get very lost in translation. There's a really big gap between what is coming out in the research world or researchers developing these guidelines and that information actually making it to people like us, like moms who need to use it, or coaches or trainers who want to use it in their practice. So one of my main goals on this podcast is I literally have it in my hands. I'm going to be reading some of it word for word so that you guys get literally directly from the source, like what current recommendations are, or what, like this is, the 2019 Canadian guideline for physical activity throughout pregnancy, which right now is like the standard of what is recommended during pregnancy. But this is still, 6 years old already. So maybe there's new stuff coming out, but this is based on what we currently have in research that is helping us at least guide choices in this instance, exercise throughout pregnancy. So again, today's topic or today's paper is the 2019 Canadian Guideline for Physical Activity Throughout Pregnancy. In their abstract, they mentioned that their goal is to provide guidance for pregnant women and OBs, exercise professional on prenatal physical activity. So that's kind of what the whole paper is about. I'm going to be jumping or just going through it. I haven't written any notes on this. I just highlighted things that I wanted to, highlight to you guys so you guys can know exactly what it says kind of in more layman's terms and be able to better use it in your own, either whether you're a coach or a provider or a pregnant or postpartum mom yourself. So let's just hop right into it. So pretty much this this guideline was created based on the expert opinions of OB care providers, exercise professionals, researchers, policy organizers, and pregnant and postpartum women themselves. So they took a collective group of these people who either work directly with this population in a variety of professional, degrees, or the pregnant postpartum moms themselves, because there is, I think, that piece to be said that okay, yes, like an OB can tell you to do something, but is the actual end user going to be able to apply that information, or is it going to actually work in real life? So I think it's really cool that they included that subgroup of people as well. And they also not only just got professional opinion from these groups of people, but they also went into all of the literature that was already provided or, available at the time. So this is 2019. From different databases, and they kind of took all of the quality ones. I think it said that they took 675 unique studies were included or gathered information from in order to create these guidelines. So these guidelines are created based on expert clinical use or what they've seen in practice, what they've seen in research, opinions of exercise professionals, opinions of OBs. So it's a lot of different angles that this paper is coming from, which I think is really important to first highlight, because it's not just one person's opinion. It's not just one field of expertise's opinion. It's a combination of a lot of different things. And they kind of came to a consensus on all these principles that we will start talking about. So in the preamble section, they talk about just kind of setting up the paper. Word for word, this says, in the absence of contraindications, which we will talk about what contraindications are and what they are for pregnancy specifically in a little bit. Following these guidelines, so if you were to come
use these guidelines, use what they say in there, that is associated with fewer newborn complications. So for instance, being too big for your gestational age or other, newborn complications. Number 2, it's associated, following these guidelines is associated with maternal health benefits, such as decreased risk of preeclampsia, gestational hypertension, gestational diabetes, C-section, instrument delivery, so vacuum or forceps, urinary incontinence, excessive gestational weight gain for the mother, and improved depression scale or prenatal depression, improved blood glucose, decreased total gestational weight gain, and decreased severity of depressive symptoms and lumbopelvic pain. So following these guidelines can clinically reduce risk of all of these different things. In addition, not only does it decrease risk of these things or improve measures, it also states word for word, physical activity is not associated with miscarriage, stillbirth, neonatal death, preterm birth, preterm or pre-labor rupture of membranes, neonatal hypoglycemia, low birth weight, birth defects, induction of labor, or birth complications. So I think that's a twofold important piece. Not only does it help with certain things, but it also does not increase the risk of, all of these considerations that I just listed out. So physical activity is super important. And that's what this guideline is kind of going into. And I think this is a big misconception. It's getting better, especially in the last few years. But knowing that exercise cannot cause these things, or physical activity is literally not associated with, kind of takes the blame off of what a lot of moms feel if things like this happen, and if they were like exercising at moderate to vigorous activity, which is what this paper is going over. It takes the blame off of moms, or at least the feeling of blame, knowing that there is no association between physical activity and these things, and that physical activity has only been shown to improve outcomes. That it's like the coolest thing. So just really wanted to focus on that. In addition, next sentence, more physical activity in terms of frequency, duration, and or volume is associated with greater benefits. And it goes into this later on in the paper too, that there has not been a ceiling that has been reached. It literally says an upper limit was not established. So they have not yet found an intensity, a frequency, a duration where negative health outcomes start to come into play. I think that's also very huge for our athletes or our avid gym goers who might think that they're doing too much, or the fear-based messaging around exercise of, if you go over this heart rate limit, or if you go over this weight limit, things can start to happen. No, that has literally not been shown. In fact, the opposite, whereas more physical activity right now, there has not been found any negative effects, and there has only been associated with greater benefits. So cool. So based on all that stuff, because of all that stuff, it says prenatal physical activity should be considered a frontline therapy for reducing risk of pregnancy complication and enhancing maternal physical and mental health. Awesome. That's what I love exercise, because it is on that preventative side. We can do things. It can help bulletproof the body, like I like to say. Obviously, nothing is a guarantee in this world. There is so many things that can go on, but exercise is not associated with bad things. It's associated with great things. It does not guarantee any specific outcome, but on average, in research, in general, it improves all of these things. Then something I'm really excited about too, or that I wish was just more common knowledge. It says, for pregnant women not currently meeting the guidelines. So those who are non-exercisers, haven't engaged in exercise, however you want to call it, they say a progressive adjustment towards them is recommended. Previously active women may continue physical activity throughout pregnancy. Sorry, that was a separate section. Here it is. All women without contraindications should be physically active throughout pregnancy. Specific subgroups were examined. 1, women who were previously inactive. There's a strong recommendation to have inactive women start exercise in pregnancy. The caveat with this is obviously a new person going into exercise, if you are 5 weeks, 6 weeks pregnant, and you found out you're pregnant and you want to get into exercise, you obviously are not going to be jumping into a CrossFit class for your first time, never having done a barbell snatch. Like, it's just basic fitness guidelines or principles to just start slow, start new, start fresh, start from the basics, start with your form, start with your breath, start with like the basic, just as if you were a beginner in anything. That still applies to pregnancy. Some people take like, oh, new people shouldn't start exercise during pregnancy because it like can have all these complications, whatever they think. That's not the case. We need to get inactive moms active during pregnancy, and we need to treat them just as a beginner in anything. So maybe we're not going to have them run 3 miles off the bat. Like, that's not going to happen. They're not going to want to do that. They're not going to be able to do that anyways. As a fitness coach who works with moms, first-time pregnant moms who have not exercised before, and they come right into my classes, we start with the basics. We start with your squat form, and here's how to do a shoulder press, and here's the intensity to go at a bike erg. Like, you start small and you start at the foundation, just like it's so simple, but I don't know why. It's just crazy that it's like just not more common knowledge. There's so many benefits to exercise during pregnancy. We want to start inactive moms working out. It literally says here, word for word, we need a progressive adjustment towards these recommendations if you were not currently meeting the guidelines or if you were previously inactive. So I hope that's enough yelling to get that point across. New moms who have never been active before should start something. They should not start strong. They should start low, and we should progressively build into that during pregnancy, even if it starts during pregnancy, because of all the health benefits. This also applies to, so this is now all women without contraindications should be physically active throughout pregnancy, including those who are previously inactive, those who are diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and those who are overweight or obese. In the past, it has been recommended to stop or heavily reduce exercise if you have something like diabetes or gestational diabetes, or if you're overweight or obese. Sounds completely bonkers to me, because those are the people who probably need exercise the most, or it's going to have the most health benefits. So at least the guidelines now say that like it also applies to these. Second recommendation coming from the guideline is that pregnant women should accumulate at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity each week in order to achieve clinically meaningful health benefits and reductions in pregnancy complications. So those things I read off at the beginning, those are the things that would be clinically meaningful. So in order to achieve those things, we can't just be working out for like 10 minutes a week and say that like, oh, I exercise, and so now I have my reduction in gestational diabetes and all those, preterm birth and all those benefits. We have to be, or the recommendation is to accumulate 150 minutes, which is the normal physical activity guideline for anybody in any population group. This is the first time, 2019 was the first time that pregnant recommendations actually matched the normal population, which is awesome. It used to be 120 minutes. I don't even know what it was before that, but now we're finally like, okay, pregnant women should be working out about the same as everybody else. And it's important in this subgroup because that is how you would achieve clinically meaningful health benefits and reduction in pregnancy complications, which is what we're going for from a benefit of exercise. Obviously, there's the moms that I work with all the time who like exercise is just a part of who they are, and they can't imagine going 10 months without working out. But if you were not exercising before, or if you need a reason to exercise, just know that like 150 minutes is the set time frame or the recommendation in order to achieve those clinically meaningful benefits. Another recommendation or highlight that they have at the beginning here is that pregnant women who experience lightheadedness, nausea, or feel unwell when they exercise flat on their back should modify their exercise position to avoid the supine position. This I want to highlight too. So this is called supine hypotensive syndrome. This is the culprit of why most women still are told that they cannot exercise on their back after 20 weeks of being pregnant, because some moms do. When they lay on their back, the pressure of the growing uterus and the growing baby can put pressure on a vein in the back of your body that is going to restrict blood flow a little bit. Sometimes that can make the mom feel lightheaded, nauseous, feeling unwell, dizzy. Obviously, for those moms that happens, just get out of that position and stop doing that exercise. Like it applies to you laying on the couch or laying on the bed or wherever it is too. It's not just exercise. But because of those women who do feel that symptom, they have blanket statemented, that's a word, I'm going to make it a term, that no woman can exercise on their back after 20 weeks, when only 8% of pregnant moms will feel these symptoms. I'm going to do a whole podcast on that too, because that's a big topic. But I'm glad that in this recommendation, they don't state, like, they don't recommend that no woman exercises on their back after 20 weeks. They say pregnant women who experience lightheadedness, nauseousness, feeling unwell when they exercise flat on the back should avoid the supine position. That's great. If you feel nauseous, get out of that position. That's good. But it does not say all pregnant women have to stop avoiding or have to stop, bench press or things that are in a supine position. So I just really like that they included that. So contraindications, that is something that they mentioned in the first paragraph. There's things called absolute contraindication and then relative contraindication. So contraindications would be anything that would mean that you should not be exercising, or that, just make it so that you shouldn't be exercising. So absolute contraindications, there's a list that they have here. I'll read them off. That would mean if you experience any of these symptoms or any of these things, that is an absolute for sure reason that you should not be exercising. Then there are relative contraindications, and they say this word for word here. Women with relative contraindications should discuss the advantages and disadvantages of moderate to vigorous physical activity with their OB care provider prior to participation. So relative contraindication means, hey, these are some warning signs. Maybe you should talk to your OB about it before you engage in heavier intensity exercise. So there's two different buckets. They highlight these so that we can know or have our buoys or our guidelines of like when exercise maybe isn't recommended or is, more relative. So here, I'm going to just read off the absolute contraindications. These are things that if you experience, you should stop exercising during pregnancy. The one is ruptured membranes, premature labor, unexplained persistent vaginal bleeding, placenta previa after 28 weeks of gestation, preeclampsia, incompetent cervix, intrauterine growth restriction or IGR, high order multiple pregnancy like triplets. That one is interesting now in the current research field, but regardless, I'm just going to list them off. Uncontrolled type 1 diabetes, uncontrolled hypertension, uncontrolled thyroid disease, and then other serious cardiovascular, respiratory, or systemic disorders. So those are things that they are saying are absolute contraindications to exercise. They describe absolute contraindication as you can assume your usual activities of daily living, but should not participate in more strenuous activities. So that's their definition. Relative contraindications that they list, these would be the ones that you should discuss with an OB or provider, the advantages or disadvantages of moderate to vigorous physical activity. First is recurrent pregnancy loss, gestational hypertension, a history of spontaneous preterm birth, mild to moderate cardiovascular or respiratory disease, symptomatic anemia, malnutrition, eating disorders, twin pregnancy after the 28th week, and other significant medical conditions. So those are ones that they're listing of like, hey, there might be some potential exercise limitations or things that we should consider when considering moderate to vigorous activities. So these are higher intensity activities. Maybe talk with an OB first, and then between the two of you guys, you can just figure out if, like, based on your medical situation, these would be appropriate or not. So that is kind of like what's all introduced in the very beginning of this paper. It's kind of the preamble it's calling, and through the abstract. Now we'll get into some of the other stuff that they get into. So let's see here. Okay, so now in the introduction, I love this sentence. Unfortunately, uncertainty among some pregnant women and OB or obstetric care providers as to whether prenatal physical activity may increase the risk of miscarriage, growth restriction, preterm birth, fatigue, or harm to the fetus have served as barriers to being active. Concerns over harms have not been substantiated by research, and the risks of not engaging in prenatal physical activity have not been adequately emphasized. In other words, people are fearing pregnant moms out of exercise with nothing to back it up, and that is harming moms. I don't know how much more clear to say it. I'm glad they said it, so it's not my words, it is their words. But literally, the fear-based messaging from providers, from family members, from people who do not have anything, no concerns over harms that have not been substantiated by anything. It's literally just their own opinion, or like just being in a conservative field. Like medicine is a conservative field. They don't want to have the risk of saying like, hey, you can do this, and then something happens, and there's that whole side of stuff too. But the risk of not engaging in physical activity is more harmful than engaging in physical activity. However, we've been told for our whole like literally everybody in the whole history of the world up into this point in time, which is kind of crazy to think about. The fitness industry and pregnancy and postpartum is literally still 5, 10 years old, 15 years old, whatever. But it's literally the fear-based messaging that goes into pregnant moms from providers, from whatever, that has no substantial research backing, has literally harmed or served as barriers to exercise. So that's what things like this paper are trying to do, is be like, hey, here's what's actually out here. And then I'm trying to, not that I had literally anything to do with this research paper, but I feel it's my job to get it into the hands of people who are going to be using it and to help that information spread over the next 10, 15, 20 years so that moms don't have to worry about this fear-based messaging anymore, because it's literally hurting us as a society. In addition, over the last 3 decades, the rates of pregnancy complications like gestational diabetes, all the things I listed, have risen dramatically, most likely as a consequence of rising rates of maternal obesity. That is not crazy for us to hear, because we know how negative health outcomes have increased over the last years. Because physical activity has been proposed as a preventative or therapeutic measure, in their words, that we need to have more pregnant moms exercising so we can decrease these pregnancy-related risks, and so we can help fight obesity and all these things over time. Not to mention, this is a whole nother podcast, but pregnancy exercising can literally help shape the fetus and the literal how your baby is being created. That can also help them fight obesity when they're born, all the way into childhood and later in adult life, they've been finding. So that it's just super important for moms to exercise. Let's just leave it at that. So I just love that they kind of highlight on that. Going into specific percentages. So they kind of list out the things that exercise can help fight against in terms of pregnancy outcomes and stuff like that. Here they go into exact percentages of how it actually helps decrease these things. So prenatal physical activity was associated with a reduction in the odds of gestational diabetes by 38%, preeclampsia by 41%, gestational hypertension by 39%, prenatal depression by 67%, and macrosomnia by 39%, so large birth weight, 39%, without increasing the odds of adverse outcomes, including preterm birth, low birth weight, miscarriage, and perinatal mortality. That's huge. Those are huge numbers. I love the prenatal depression one, 67%. Like that's a lot of people that like struggle during pregnancy, that literally exercise can just fight that like immediately. Like I on my Instagram all the time, or just like literally all my clients, I'm like, I hear it all the time. I I preach it, and I have people tell me all the time that like when they are exercising during pregnancy, that's when they feel the best. And that's why it's not just about, keeping the skills or keeping how heavy you can lift or feeling or like looking good or not gaining weight. It's like it physically makes you feel better. Like that is the most important piece. And helping moms keep doing active things to make them feel like themselves at a time when their body is constantly changing. But like that has so much mental benefit. And I think we talk a lot about postpartum depression. I don't think we realize that prenatal depression, like depression during pregnancy, because of all these physical changes and limitations that we've been putting on pregnant moms, there's a huge benefit to that too. And when you see a pregnant mom working out on Instagram or whatever, it's not just so they can look good or not gain the baby weight or like show themselves off. It's like that is literally making them feel like a human, and that makes a huge difference on how they approach motherhood, how they enter motherhood, and how they can like kind of raise their family going forward too. So I love that. Again, they again state here, physical activity during the first trimester did not increase the odds of miscarriage or congenital anomalies. Importantly, there was also evidence suggesting that not engaging in physical activity from the first trimester increased the odds of pregnancy complications like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, gestational hypertension, weight gain, and depressive symptoms. So not only does exercise not increase the odds of adverse outcomes like miscarriage. So there's literally, if you exercise during your first pregnancy and you had a miscarriage, just like myself, happened to me, that exercise had nothing to do with your miscarriage or any anomalies in your baby. Additionally, there was also evidence suggesting physical activity, not engaging in physical activity can increase the odds of pregnancy complications. So there is literally only good to be had from exercise in the first trimester. I'll also be doing a whole podcast on first trimester exercise modifications. One of the biggest being like just adapting to your own fatigue and energy levels. So there is something to be said about those who are so physically sick that they cannot exercise. So this is not something to shame anybody who was not able to work out in the first trimester. They are simply just saying, working out in the first trimester can help tremendously increase or decrease the odds of these pregnancy complications. It goes again into saying the consensus guidelines panel made a strong recommendation for previously inactive women to exercise or to follow these guidelines as well. Because especially from this, there was evidence from a randomly controlled trial demonstrating an improvement in gestational weight gain and blood glucose. So kind of going back into that inactive women should be engaging in exercise to get all these benefits. Love it. What else is in here? I'm just kind of going up. Physical. Oh, this was a cool one too. So the 150 minutes is obviously the recommendation. That's to achieve clinically meaningful benefits. However, physical activity below the recommendations also incurred some benefits, is what the word for word they were saying. In addition, combining aerobic exercise and resistance training, so weight training during pregnancy, was more effective at improving health outcomes than interventions focused on aerobic exercise alone. So two things there. One, if you exercise below that 150 minutes a week, you are still going to get benefits. If you're going from 0 to 50 minutes a week, you're going to have benefits. Maybe it's not as much of these clinically meaningful things that they had mentioned, but there's still benefit to this. So this is kind of combating that all or nothing mindset. Doing something is better than nothing. Research is showing this right here. So doing something, even if it's not the full 150 minutes, don't just think you should be throwing in the towel because you can't reach that amount. We still want to be doing something, and there are still going to be benefits. In addition, doing resistance training along with aerobic exercise is more effective than just aerobic exercise alone. So yes, walks are great, runs are great if you're still able to do that during pregnancy, but resistance training is what moves the needle. And so strength training during pregnancy is really huge in helping improve health outcomes. So it's not, again, just from a body, physical, looking good, feeling good. Obviously, those things are so important, but there's also like that's how we improve health outcomes that can make things way easier during pregnancy and way smoother postpartum. The next sentence they go into, this goes back kind of what I said before too. They said that we further identified a dose-response relationship between increasing intensities of physical activity and decreasing odds of preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, gestational hypertension, and a reduction in depressive symptoms and circulating maternal blood glucose. So they said increasing activity or increasing intensity of physical activity had a like linear, essentially a dose response of decreasing the odds of all these things. So the higher the intensity they found that these women did, the lower the odds of all these complications was. That is huge because we have been told and feared into thinking high intensity exercise is going to be harmful at some point. Getting our heart rate over 140 beats a minute is going to be harmful. It's going to pull blood away from us. That is literally not the case. The exact opposite actually is the case. Of the higher intensity you go, so far shown in research, the more decreasing or the less odds you'll have of all these things that I just listed. So I just love all of this. They go into some safety precautions as well. So some things they specifically mention, and I'm going to throw a caveat at the end of this too. They mention that women should not scuba dive as the fetus is not protected from the decompression sickness and gas embolism. I live in Michigan, so I don't know a lot of people who scuba dive, but that is one of the subgroups that they recommend not to do, or activities that they say not to do. And then this one's a little bit more abstract. Women are recommended to avoid activities which involve physical contact or danger of falling, which may increase the risk of fetal trauma. These activities include, but are not limited to, horseback riding, downhill skiing, ice hockey, gymnastics, or Olympic lifts. Interesting. There actually was a study that came out this year. Maybe I'll do a whole podcast on that, about contact sports in pregnancy and how the risk is actually way lower than we originally thought. So that's an interesting one with a little asterisk. The other asterisk I'll say is that although research will tell us these things, telling a mom who has ridden horses her whole life, she's going to have her own level of comfortability, and you might not be able to tell her to not ride a horse for 9 months. Maybe there will be a point in time where she doesn't feel comfortable herself and she's going to pull herself off of that. But even though research says something, doesn't mean it's going to be applied in real life. Same thing with downhill skiing, or I've seen like wake surfers, for instance, mountain bikers, all these people who have extreme body awareness and comfortability in that specific sport that does have an increase in physical contact or danger of falling. You're not going to tell a mom not to. Maybe the mom won't want to anyways. But this is where there's sometimes a disconnect between what research says and what's actually working in real life. So we need to be aware of what research says, but then also pull our own 2 cents into it based on our own experience, individualization, all that stuff. Same thing with ice hockey, gymnastics. Olympic lifts is an interesting one too, because I personally am still Olympic lifting because I feel comfortable with it. I'm not barbell snatching anymore because I don't have that proficiency, and I felt like I'm 30 weeks as I say this podcast or go through this podcast. I felt like I was changing the bar path around my belly, and at that point I'm like, okay, it's not worth bad form habits and all this stuff. But I'm still barbell cleaning. I'm still, not that it's Olympic lifting, but barbell stuff in general, or just more dynamic work. So again, it's this disconnect sometimes between they have good reason. Anything that might increase the risk of fetal trauma, I think no mom wants to induce pain or induce risk of contact with anything with their belly that could harm their baby. Ask any pregnant mom, they would remove anything that they would feel would increase the risk or harm their own baby. No mom wants to harm their own baby. it's a matter of their comfortability with those recommendation activities that they are not recommending. So I'm just going to leave it at that. That's a whole nother soapbox. Another one that they mentioned, this is a big one that I've posted on before too, is hot yoga. So same thing. Moms who are well adapted to that environment might not have any symptoms, might feel great, it might be the only activity that makes them feel good. Why would we be pulling them out? We would be pulling them out if there was excessive heat, in terms of, or like heat stroke or like heat symptoms. If you're feeling dehydrated, if you're feeling lightheaded, dizzy, all these things, those are the things where we should be focusing more on, like the outcome that we're avoiding, not the activity that might cause that outcome. Because again, we cannot blanket statement things over a whole subgroup of people that are well adapted and well versed in these different activities. So this is a whole conversation that's kind of going around in the pregnancy postpartum world of, yes and no activity kind of thing. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But the guidelines do say to avoid these activities. Again, it's now 2025. A lot of moms are coming out and being like, hey, I'm doing this activity. I feel totally fine. So we're seeing a more individualized approach with a lot of this stuff. They also have a little box of, this will be my last piece, reasons to stop physical activity and consult a healthcare provider, the ones that they list. Again, it kind of goes into some of those contraindications we talked about earlier, but in general, persistent excessive shortness of breath that does not resolve with rest, severe chest pain, regular and painful uterine contractions, vaginal bleeding, persistent loss of fluid from the vagina indicating rupture of membranes, or persistent dizziness or faintness that does not resolve on rest. So these are things that a mom is going to feel, and they're going to pull themselves out of the physical activity anyways. But these would be reasons to stop physical activity, or like when you reach your own upper limit, and consult a healthcare provider. I like that they mentioned this too, because these are symptom-based strategies to reduce your intensity in exercise. They are not saying you cannot blanket statement do X exercise at this duration, at this intensity. They're saying if these are some things that you are experiencing, that would be a reason to reduce your intensity. Outside of that and those absolute contraindications, we have not found an upper limit, and that is freaking awesome. So that was, I literally just went through the whole guidelines. Obviously you can read it word for word. There's going to be a lot of other, there's a lot that it talks about. It's a 15-page paper. So that was a highlights or a summary of it. But just overall, really great information. Somebody who headed this her name is Margie Davenport. She's a researcher that I follow pretty closely. She's the one who's kind of leading the charge on a lot of this higher intensity research for pregnancy and postpartum. I'm also going to be doing a full podcast episode on their postpartum guidelines that is 2025, which is super exciting. So that's super recent research guiding postpartum return to exercise. But this is, again, the 2019 Canadian guideline for physical activity throughout pregnancy. You can download this yourself. I'll actually include a link to it in the show notes here. So if you want to, and you want to get nerdy, I love reading research articles. It's literally what I did in college. I went to University of Michigan for exercise science. So we just would read research articles all the time. But now it's on things that I really love and I'm excited about and get to internalize. So hopefully this episode was helpful. I will be doing a lot more of them in the future on just different current research that is up to date. Let me know if that helps you too, and I will see you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Mother FIGRs podcast. If these episodes help or resonate with you in any way, it would be so helpful to the show if you could leave a review so we can get this into more moms' hands. And if you're looking for even more guidance and direction when it comes to pregnancy and postpartum fitness, I got you covered. My Mother FIGRs app subscription includes my Figure Pregnancy and Figure Postpartum workout programs, in addition to our general fitness programs. You'll get the day-by-day workouts you need to help you feel strong, pain-free, and labor-ready during pregnancy, and also the recovery, strength, and progressions you'll need to get back to the activities you love, full of strength and without symptoms after baby arrives. If you're local to the Brighton, Michigan area, I also host daily women's functional fitness classes, a 6-week postpartum return to fitness course, and pregnancy and postpartum consultation sessions. For those who are providers, coaches, or practitioners in the space, I hold a live Mother FIGRs certification course that equips you with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to train and work with this population. For information on all of these services and programs, make sure to check out fitisgettingreal.com/moms or head to the show notes for the direct link. I'm so thankful that you tuned into today's episode, and I will catch you next time.